Right now, all eyes are back on Iowa tonight, where nearly a dozen GOP presidential hopefuls are set to speak at a fundraising event, including former President Trump and Governor DeSantis.
And as the governor tries to gain ground on the campaign trail, 10 Tampa Bay's Aaron Parsegian reports he also continues to face criticism over the state's Black history standards.
After a week that saw a crash and a campaign shakeup, Governor Ron DeSantis, still polling in second, is looking to gain ground in the pivotal Hawkeye state.
I think that we're in good shape. I think this has been a great area for us. We're going to continue going out and meeting with individual voters in all these early states, and that's going to be the focus.
But in the past couple weeks, a lot of the outside focus is on the Black history teaching standards in Florida, in part because of instructions for middle schoolers to learn how slaves developed skills which could be applied for their personal benefit.
It's not only misleading, it is false, and it is pushing propaganda.
On the trail, DeSantis has defended the standard, saying it was crafted by scholars, adding critics like the vice president are mischaracterizing them.
And she tried to demagogue it, saying somehow that was like justifying slavery, which was totally the opposite. I mean, they were very clear about the injustices. She's now been called on that because she supported an AP African American history course that had the same thing in it.
The governor referring to this language in the course framework for the College Board's AP African American Studies course, which the state received blowback for banning earlier this year. But criticism over the standards are still mounting, with South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, the Senate's only Black Republican and a fellow presidential hopeful, saying this Thursday.
Slavery was really about separating families, about mutilating humans, and even raping their wives. It was just devastating. So I would hope that every person in our country, and certainly running for president, would appreciate that.
DeSantis responding to Scott Friday.
You know, I think part of the reason our country has struggled is because D.C. Republicans all too often accept false narratives.
Aaron Parsegian, 10 Tampa Bay.
Critics say these new standards miss very important historical context and appear to put a positive spin on what was a very brutal institution. So over the last few days, we spent some time looking at what those who were enslaved here in Florida said themselves. Through interviews from the 1930s under President Franklin D. Roosevelt, we get an idea of what life was like for enslaved people living here in Florida. Some shared stories of physical abuse and their lack of fundamental skills like reading. Any practical skills they did learn during slavery, they say came at a cost. Riviana Boynton spoke of those who learned to make shoes or furniture, saying, quote, they had to do most everything well or get paddled. Reverend Eli Boyd said he didn't learn to read until he was 26, and that was only through a spelling book that had been thrown away. After emancipation, some southern states adopted what were called black codes, which limited rights for African Americans long before Jim Crow. And I spoke with anthropologist and former Hillsborough County teacher Shannon Peck Bartle about the challenges African Americans faced after emancipation.
They had been deprived of resources in order to help them in a life of freedom. The intentional blocking of any form of education is something that they would have had to struggle against.
According to National Geographic, black codes also limited what jobs African Americans could get and what kind of property they could own.